Hello, I'm Nick Fouch from Fouchmatic Off Grid, and here we are, day 3 of our permaculture design course out here at Wheaton Labs. I told you yesterday that you can come back and see my mind blown. This is what that looks like.
Day 3 of the permaculture design course was extremely information rich. So much so that we asked Tim Barker the next morning to recap a couple of concepts just for us.
I'm Tim Barker. I'm teaching the PDC here this year at Wheaton Labs. And yesterday what we went through is we talked about, we're going back over our design, and there's a thing called the Yeomans scale of permanence. Yeomans was an Australian, and basically the concept is that you start from those things that you can least affect and then work downwards to those things that you can most affect.
You have to be able to recognize the things that you can change and the things that you can't change about a particular piece of property.
The interesting thing is the most changeable in Yeomans scale of permanence is soils, and the least changeable is climate. I mean, most people get climate, but they think, well, the soil's there, but of course we can do lots of things with soil. So it normally runs from climate, then landform, so climate being, basically Darren Doherty in Australia talks about climate being the rules of the game, and then the landform is the chessboard on which the game is played, and then you come down, then you have your water and access, and it runs right down the way through fences and finally to soils.
You can always build soil. That's relatively easy to do. So doing a soil test on a piece of property is not necessarily a good indicator of whether you're going to be able to achieve your goals on that spot.
So that's Yeomans. He wrote 3 books. They are actually available online. I couldn't tell you where, but they are online for free with the permission of the owner to their rights, which is his son. Or, you can still buy those books. Very interesting reading, and amazing to see somebody that in the 1950s was talking about, the need to change the way that we do agriculture. And we also did just a bit of a fun exercise. You've got to get out sometimes, you can't sit. You can see people's eyes glazing over when they hit overload. You've got to get outside. So we jumped outside here, and it's just a simple exercise in the importance of making lots of connections between the various elements in the design. I got everyone to write down an element. So we had everything from rain barrels to someone had a pet composter and all these things. And what we do is we go around in a circle, and then we try and make connections by running a string between all the people. And what you see very quickly is that you make a web, and that web is supportive.
So the rainwater harvesting from the rooftop falls over.
Oh no.
Then we've got it backed up with ponds, we've got it backed up with a windmill, we're still fine.
And you can even lose multiple connections and it still maintains its basic structure. Whereas if we were looking at, say, something like a monoculture kind of idea, then those webs of connectivity don't exist. You have very linear relationships, and of course you lose one or two of those relationships and the system becomes very unstable. So the more connectivity you get, then the more resilience in the system, and the more it can withstand shocks. And I mean, another term that's bandied about is anti-fragile. So resilient means that it kind of can recover. Anti-fragile means it can take a beating and take a licking and still keep ticking. So there's those 2 concepts.
We then talked about a really common idea in permaculture, which some people know of who aren't even really students of permaculture, which is zonation. The idea being that the things that need your attention the most often are the nearest to you. So that's a way to conserve your own energy, but also that it grabs your attention. The things that need you, that you need to do something to in order to maintain or to harvest or any number of other tasks that you may have, are nearest to your home or in your home.
In addition to all this, if we don't seem overwhelmed yet, day 3 of the permaculture design course was our day to cover the 10 principles of permaculture design, or the 10 design principles, which have already shown up in the comments of a previous video, and we'll list them again below.
So we were given a specific set of design principles. These are guiding principles as we assess our site, but also make decisions about placing elements on our site. And that is actually where the actual design work begins, is when you're taking these elements, be it a chicken or any number of other elements that you're going to try to incorporate into your homestead, and you actually start plopping them down somewhere on the land. So with those 10 design principles in mind, we were then sent out onto the landscape to look at some of the solutions here at Wheaton Labs, but also just sort of the natural landscape, and try to assess them and see how well they fit within these design principles we've been given.
Hedges, catch and store energy, obtain a yield, multifunction.
Did you get make connections?
Yes. Make connections, create interactive diversity, cycle nutrients, accelerate succession, use edge.
We split up into groups, and we all went different places, and we all came up with different things.
We also have catch and store. The major function of this hugel bed for catch and store is the water, we think, and also biomass. And then it's catching and stopping noise, radiation, as we talked about the different sides. It's catching a visual break from the area. It's catching wind as well, and heat. If you just look at the whole hugel
Strawberries.
bed. Strawberries.
It really was just an exercise to look critically and try to begin to recognize landforms and elements within a property and how they're interacting with each other. The evening session is what made my brain sort of ooze out of my ears. It seemed almost magical, but it's just physics. Tim Barker, who has built these things in New Zealand, went over what is known as a ram pump. And this is a way of pumping water just using the force of the water itself.
What happens is, when the water actually hits, it pushes up through another non-return valve there, and it compresses the air in point 7, in that chamber number 7. And then what then happens is the water suddenly comes to a halt, it's expended all its energy, and you get a reverse pressure wave actually travels back. What that does is sucks this open, and then what happens is the water reverses and then starts to flow again. So it comes down, bang, water squirts up through that non-return valve that's number 6 into the chamber, compressing the air. After that valve shuts, the number 6 valve shuts, then that compressed air slowly forces the water up pipe 8. So you get this cyclic, self-timing, absolute smash.
It's ideally done in a moving stream. So you're using the force of that moving stream in order to create enough force to actually pump it at really pretty high pressure and pretty high head distances back up the hill. And the example that he showed was incredibly successful, and it was a contraption that was built entirely by him and a group of people, and a very bare minimum of expense put into some sort of specialized fittings. None of it was super high tech. There wasn't exactly what you think of as technology involved, but it is technology. It's looking at the physics involved and harnessing the energy that's already there. And those are the kinds of solutions that are going to make it easier for us to have the things that we need and expend less energy.
Right, so we've identified alfalfa, peas, yarrow, rhubarb, clover, orchard grass, onion, iris, chamomile, kale, strawberries.
Smooth brome.
Smooth.
Is that
brome.
grass that kind of hangs off to the side?
The thing is that I'm taking away from this is permaculture is not a solution. It's a method. It's a way of thinking about things. It's not a prescriptive do these things and it'll all work. There are sort of a bag of tricks to be able to choose from, but they're only appropriate if they're going to work. So I can't help but think while I'm sitting in class where these different techniques and different things are going on my own place. But that is not the way that design works. I'm not able to just sort of pick and choose and sort of splash them all over the landscape. I really have to get through the course and be able to go through the design exercise here on the lab and understand the process before going and looking at my own property with a clear head and looking at it objectively and making good decisions. If I just pick and choose little elements and things that I like or things that I think I would, be able to do easily, that's not design. That's just a hobby. My family is awesome. I'm so glad that they're here with me. It would not be the same if I were just out here on my own, sleeping in a tent on the ground and not being able to talk about these things with the people who I'm trying to provide for with this method. So I'm really glad they're here with me. It's a family affair.
Yes, have all those in it.
The thing is, it's more than hot enough.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Nick from Fouch Off Grid. Come on back tomorrow for day 4 of the PDC at Wheaton Labs. Thanks for watching.
Good night, Tubby.
Hello.